Good morning, Connecticut. Joe Sokolovic here, bringing you Connecticut's education crisis, a tale of two realities. While some celebrate Connecticut's education achievements, a different reality exists in black and brown communities like ours. These districts face devastating funding cuts that are rooted in systemic inequality, cuts that threaten the future of public education. We've got two realities that we are living. Um, the public relations reality that you see that everything is awesome. You feel like dancing around like one of those Lego characters, which we know is like not the reality for the majority of our children. Yes, there are some bright spots in our education system in Bridgeport, but they would have you believe everything is awesome so they don't have to give us any more money. This is, in fact, how the white wealthy districts achieve. Everything is indeed awesome in those districts, but black and brown communities have faced devastating budget cuts year after year. This past year has brought significant losses, and next year threatens to be tens of millions of dollars more in cuts if this is not addressed. How did we get here? Well, Connecticut has had a historic history of redlining and segregating black and brown and poor people into one area in this city through racist housing, and it currently exists today still with restrictive zoning. None of us in these poor communities can afford to move to the wealthy communities and take advantage of these school systems. There is a clear correlation between underfunded districts with the majority of black and brown students versus well-funded property, predominantly white districts. Now, there were several lawsuits, which I won't get into here, that resulted in basically the state of Connecticut saying, yes, this is a broken system. The way you fund education is racist by relying on property taxes. So they came up with the ECS formula, which was created 30 years ago. I've addressed this in other things, so I won't go into it. There's misleading claims that this formula is fully funded. However, it has been frozen since 2013, and the foundation amount has remained stuck at $11,525 for over a decade, despite rising costs. Had the ECS been adjusted for inflation, it would be about approximately $16,500 in the foundation amount. That's approximately a $5,000 loss. It says per student, but it's not a per student loss. It's a loss to the foundation amount, which does not translate to $5,000, but it's pretty close to it. Property wealthy districts like Greenwich, Westport, they can make up for this loss. Property poor districts like Bridgeport, Waterbury, New Britain, and other property poor districts cannot make up this difference. That creates a humongous racial disparity in funding. Currently, the racial gap sits at approximately $1 billion. Bridgeport alone has lost about $92 million to inflation this year alone, and is coming up close to $500 million in total. The big five districts combined have lost about $500 million this year alone. Now, how do we fix this? We raised the foundation amount to $17,000. This would eliminate the racial funding gap between black and brown districts and white districts, finally delivering on the promise of the ECS to provide equal, equitable education funding to poor and black and brown districts. Bridgeport alone would receive approximately $100 million more annually. The other four districts would see similar increase, give or take $10 million apiece. It would address the historical inequity. Raising the foundation amount by $5,500 to be $17,000 would eliminate the gap. Coincidentally, this is almost exactly the same amount that was lost due to inflation. It almost seems like that the state of Connecticut is dragging its feet on closing the gap between funding black and brown districts and white districts. This cannot be accepted anymore in the state of Connecticut. Now, this is very, very important. we need at least a $2,000 increase to avoid any cuts. That is not to add a single service. That is just to avoid cuts. But as I said, we need $17,000 for equality and equity in funding black and brown and white districts. So let's shoot for that $17,000, but keep that number in mind. What's at stake this year? We have already lost our librarians. We've lost mental health supports. We've lost teachers and paraprofessionals. Transportation is under threat. Facility workers are gone. And some of our neighborhood schools are under threat of closure if we do not get more funding. This will cause our students to lose out on future opportunities in life, and they will not be prepared for college. If we don't act this legislative session, the racially discriminatory public education funding scheme will continue. Public education as we know it may come to an end, and charter schools and for-profit companies will swoop in like vultures to profit off the misery of our children, much like the school-to-prison pipeline has done. So what can we do? We need to advocate, contact our legislators, and demand action on the foundation amount. Educate, share these facts with your community and media. Organize, build coalitions across districts facing similar challenges. Fight for our children's future, our communities, and educational justice. Our children's future depends on what we do right now. The question is, will we fight for them? Will you?